Some fires burn paper. The fire my husband lit that day burned away every last shred of doubt I had left. He wasn't just hiding a secret. He was worshiping it at a hidden altar. The man I married wasn't just a liar. He was the high priest of his own dark religion. The game has changed. Before, we were hunting a ghost. Now, the ghost is hunting us because he knows someone is watching. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Leo and I didn't speak. We didn't have to. The silence in my little SUV was screaming, thick with the horror of what we had just seen, the reflection of the flames still dancing in my mind's eye. The beautiful lie of our new life had been finally unveiled, and underneath it was just an ugly, empty grave. We thought we were getting closer to the truth. We were so naive. We hadn't been getting closer to it. We had just been walking deeper into the cage.
We got home before him. We had 5 minutes to pretend we knew nothing. 5 minutes to erase the absolute horror from our faces and act like we'd just been out buying milk. A normal Tuesday. Our home wasn't a home anymore. It was officially a Cold War zone, and I was pretty sure I had left the peace treaty in my other purse. When Michael walked through the door, the panicked, frantic man we had followed to the lake was gone. The architect was back, the calm, collected, in-control husband. But there was a difference, a terrifying one. His eyes didn't just look at you anymore. They scanned you, like a security system looking for a breach. That night, the dinner was a masterclass in silent terror. The clinking of our forks on the plates was so loud, it felt like we were sending Morse code messages to each other. "He knows! Run!" He waited until we were all seated, and then he began. "Where were you this afternoon, Jessica?" he asked, his voice so casual, so light, that it made the hair on my arms stand up. Just running some errands," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of cheap plastic. My internal monologue was just screaming, "Please don't ask what errands. Please don't ask what errands." He didn't. He just nodded slowly, then turned his gaze to Leo. "Leo, finish your homework?" Leo just mumbled something that sounded vaguely like, "Yes." His eyes glued to his mashed potatoes as if they held the secrets to the universe. And I realized he wasn't asking questions. He was collecting data. This was his new strategy. No more explosions, no more rage, just quiet, steady, psychological pressure. He was testing us, looking for a flicker of fear in our eyes, a tremor in our voices. We weren't just a family having dinner. We were spies, being debriefed by the enemy commander, and he was trying to find the mole. And that's the little lesson I learned right there over a plate of very tense pot roast. The most dangerous predators, the ones who are truly in control, don't always roar. Sometimes they just ask you to pass the salt, while they look for the cracks in your story. In a war like this, a war fought in whispers and side glances, while pretending everything is perfectly normal, the pressure has to go somewhere. Someone always has to be the first to break.
In a war like this, a war fought over pot roast and polite questions, someone always breaks first. A war always has casualties. And the first casualty of our new Cold War was my strongest ally. Leo couldn't take it. The weight of his father's quiet, intense gaze at the dinner table was like a physical pressure. He had been so strong, so stoic, our little general. But seeing his father, knowing what we knew, sitting at the family table like nothing was wrong, it shattered him. After dinner, he didn't just go to his room. He retreated. He vanished behind his bedroom door, and we heard the quiet, definitive click of the lock. For the first time since we had formed our secret little Truth Finders Club, he shut me out. I went to his door, my hand hovering over the wood before I knocked softly. "Leo? Are you okay?" Silence. I knocked again, a little more insistent this time. "Leo, please talk to me." Still nothing. But then, I heard it. A faint, muffled sound from the other side of the door. A sound that broke my heart into 1,000 tiny pieces. He was crying. Not the loud, angry sobs of a frustrated teenager, but the quiet, gut-wrenching sobs of a boy whose entire world had just been revealed as a lie. The truth about his father, the horror of his mother's real lonely grave, it was just too much. He wasn't just grieving his mom anymore. He was grieving the father he thought he had. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, my own voice barely a whisper. "Leo, we're in this together." The reply that came back wasn't a whisper. It was a raw, broken cry, an explosion of pain that he had been holding in for far too long. "Leave me alone," his voice cracked, full of a pain that felt too big for that little room. "He's my father. What are we even doing?" And that was the gut punch. That was the terrible, unspoken truth of our entire mission. For me, Michael was a monster I had accidentally married. But for Leo, he was still Dad. And the psychological weight of trying to expose your own father, of having to choose between the truth and the man who raised you, was a burden no 16-year-old should ever have to carry. Our alliance had just suffered its first major crack, not because of a disagreement or a fight, but because of something so much harder to fix, a broken heart. I stood there, in the empty hallway, feeling utterly helpless. One of my soldiers had just fallen, and I realized with a new sense of dread that the person I had been most worried about, the one I thought was our weakest link, was now the only one left standing beside me. As one soldier retreated, another one unexpectedly stepped onto the front line. I was standing there in the hallway, feeling completely defeated, an army of one. I was so wrapped up in Leo's pain and my own fear that I didn't even hear her come up behind me. It was Chloe. She had been home the whole time, a silent witness to our silent war. She had seen me follow Leo to his room, had seen me standing at his locked door. She must have felt the temperature in the house drop 20 degrees. She followed me into my room, closing the door softly behind us. The usual teenage sarcasm was gone from her face, replaced by something I hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine, unfiltered concern. "What happened?" she asked, her voice quiet. "What did you see out there? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Oh, honey, if only it were that simple." I looked at my daughter, my rebellious, easily influenced, weak link of a daughter. My first instinct was to protect her, to give her a watered-down, PG-rated version of the truth. But then I looked into her eyes, and I realized that lying to protect her was exactly the kind of thing Michael would do. And I was done with lies. In that moment, I made a decision. A huge, terrifying gamble. I decided to trust her completely. I took a deep breath. We followed him, I started, and then I told her everything. The anonymous email that set him off, the frantic escape from his office, following his car for miles out of the city, the fire, and the little flat, hidden headstone by the lake with her name on it. I watched her face, waiting for the fear, the disbelief, the tears, but they never came. As the full, ugly truth of the story settled over her, something else happened. Her face, which had been soft with concern, hardened. The confusion in her eyes sharpened into a cold, clear anger. She looked right at me, her voice steady and full of a fire I'd never heard before. He lied to Leo his whole life about where his mom was buried? She said, shaking her head in disbelief. That's not just sick, it's evil. And that was it. That was the moment. For Chloe, this was no longer about a diary or a mysterious man named D. This was about a father's ultimate betrayal of his own son. It was a line that, in her world, was unforgivable. That's the funny lesson you learn in a crisis. Your strongest soldier isn't always the one who looks the toughest. Sometimes, it's the one you underestimated the most. In that moment, Chloe wasn't an observer anymore. She wasn't a pawn in her father's game or a reluctant bystander in mine. She was a warrior. She looked at me, the gears turning in her sharp young mind. Her next words weren't about what we had seen. They were about what we were going to do next. I was so focused on trying to comfort Leo that I almost missed the moment my daughter became a warrior. She looked at me, a new, sharp intelligence in her eyes. "He burned the files, right?" she asked, her voice clear and analytical. "Jessica, people like him, they don't destroy things. They just hide them. Did he have a cloud backup?" I just stared at her. The thought had never even crossed my mind. While Leo and I were stuck in the analog world of paper and fire, Chloe was thinking 3 steps ahead in a digital language I didn't even speak. She took my laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a purpose I'd never seen before. She found the login page for his company's cloud storage. "Password," she muttered, and I watched, completely useless, as she tried all the things I would have tried. Sarah's name, Leo's birthday, all denied. She leaned back, frustrated for a moment, then looked at me. "He's a narcissist, right? It's not going to be about someone he loves. It's going to be about the one thing he worships." And as she said it, I knew. I saw the answer in my head at the same time she did. "His legacy," I whispered. She typed it in. "Harrison Designs Legacy." And then, in beautiful, glorious green letters that made my heart do a backflip, "Access granted." She had gotten us in. Being inside Michael's digital fortress was like walking through the mind of a supervillain. Everything was perfectly organized, labeled, filed away in neat little digital boxes. I ignored the boring stuff: blueprints, contracts, angry emails from clients about leaky roofs. I was looking for the one thing he thought he had destroyed forever. I navigated to an archive folder, hidden deep within the server. It was labeled simply Project Sarah. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a project. It was an insurance policy. I clicked it open, and there they were, the digital ghosts of the files he burned. Dozens of scanned documents, financial statements, legal forms, and one huge multi-page PDF. It was a life insurance policy taken out on Sarah Harrison just a year before she died. And the sole beneficiary, the person who stood to gain everything if she was gone, was Michael. I scrolled through the dense, boring legal text, my eyes glazing over. It was all standard stuff, the kind of fine print no one ever reads. But I knew the answer had to be in here somewhere. And then I saw it. A single clause buried on page 17 that explained everything. My finger traced the words on the screen. Policy void in the event of suicide or death resulting from participation in a felony. My God. The whole room went quiet. It was like a bomb had gone off in my head. If she killed herself, he gets nothing. If she died while trying to run away with her lover, D, which could be seen as participating in some kind of crime and a messy divorce, he gets nothing. He needed her death to look clean, natural, a tragic, unavoidable illness. It wasn't just about jealousy. It wasn't just about control. It was about money, a life-changing, empire-building amount of money. There wasn't just a motive for his lies. There was a multi-million-dollar motive for her murder. And that's the ugliest lesson of all, isn't it? Sometimes the biggest, darkest secrets in a family aren't about love or hate. They're about something much colder, much simpler. They're about the number at the bottom of a balance sheet. I leaned back from the computer, my heart hammering in my chest. I suddenly had a weapon. Not just a clue, a full-blown smoking gun of a murder weapon. Now I just had to figure out how to use it. I was sitting on the edge of Leo's bed, trying to put together the shattered pieces of a broken son. He was so lost, so adrift in a sea of grief and betrayal. I was failing, miserably. I had no words, no magic spell that could make this better. And just when I thought our little rebellion was over before it even began, a determined daughter walked in, carrying a laptop. And she had just found the murder weapon. Chloe didn't say a word. She just opened the laptop on Leo's bed and turned the screen toward us. She pointed to the life insurance policy, to the multi-million-dollar number, to the fine print that changed everything. I watched Leo's eyes scan the page. I watched as the hollow, heartbroken look in his eyes slowly, frighteningly, began to change. The grief didn't just disappear. It crystallized. It hardened. It transformed from a puddle of sorrow into a shard of cold, clear ice. He wasn't a sad little boy anymore. He was a son with a mission. He looked up from the screen, not at me, but at the wall, as if he was seeing a ghost. His voice was flat, dead, and terrifyingly calm. It was about money. He let me grieve a lie for money. In that moment, Leo grew up. He aged 10 years in 10 seconds. The pain was still there, but it now had a purpose. It had a target. This wasn't just about uncovering a secret anymore. It was about getting justice for his mother. Our alliance wasn't just patched up. It had been reforged in the fire of this new ugly truth. We weren't just a sad stepmom and two confused kids anymore. We were a team with a suspect, a motive, and now, a weapon. We were finally ready to fight. But we weren't the only ones playing this game. Across town, another player was about to make his own move on the board.
Our alliance was back, stronger than ever, But as we were huddled in my room, planning our next move, I couldn't shake a deep, unsettling feeling. We weren't the only players on this board. We had created a ripple when we pointed Michael's rage at my ex-husband. And a man like Mark doesn't just absorb a ripple, he turns it into a tidal wave. I didn't know what he was doing, of course. I couldn't, but I knew him. I knew the way his mind worked, because I had spent 15 years trying to survive it. I knew he wouldn't just be scared, he would be furious. And then he would get strategic. I could almost picture him, not as a victim, but as a predator who had just been challenged by a bigger animal. He would want to know everything about this new threat. He wouldn't confront Michael directly. That wasn't his style. He'd be smarter. He'd try to get inside the circle, to find the other players, to gather information so he could control the narrative when it all finally exploded. He was a ghost from my past, and now he was haunting my present in a way I never could have predicted. He was no longer just an annoyance. He was a wild card, an unwitting detective playing his own dangerous game. And I had no idea that his next move would intersect with ours in the most terrifying way. We had a motive. We had a deadline. We had a united front. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, it felt like we were in control. We had a plan. We would spend the next 2 weeks digging, preparing, and arming ourselves for the moment we finally met Daniel Moreau. We thought we had time. And then a message arrived that changed all the rules. Again. Leo's phone, which was sitting on the bed between us, buzzed with an alert. We all froze. It was a new, encrypted message from the other side. It was from Daniel. My heart hammered in my chest as Leo picked up the phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. He opened it, and his eyes went wide. He read it aloud, his voice quiet and laced with a new, sudden dread. Daniel, something has come up. I've had to move the gallery opening forward. It's not in 2 weeks. It's tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. The air was sucked out of the room. Our 2-week plan just evaporated into a few short hours. But that wasn't the worst part. He continued reading, his voice dropping to a whisper. And one more thing. I know your father is watching. Don't come to the gallery. It's not safe. I have a different location for us to meet. An old place. A place only your mother and I knew about. Meet me there. Come alone. The last 2 words just hung there in the air between us, vibrating with danger. Come alone. Our entire investigation, our hope for justice, now rested on a secret meeting in a secret location in less than 24 hours, and our star witness was demanding we send a 16-year-old boy to meet him all by himself. The fallout from the fire had settled, only to reveal a landscape more dangerous than we ever could have imagined. In a single evening, our little alliance was tested, broken, and then reforged into something stronger. We saw our strongest soldier retreat, only to watch the daughter I thought was our weakest link rise up and become our fiercest warrior. She didn't just find a clue. She found the cold, hard, multi-million-dollar reason for a woman's death. We thought that gave us power. We thought that gave us control. We were wrong. The timeline has collapsed. The meeting is upon us, and our key witness, our only real hope for the truth, is demanding that we break apart our team and send a 16-year-old boy into the darkness,
alone. Is this a trap? Is Daniel trying to protect Leo or isolate him? What is this secret place that only he and Sarah knew? Michael is on high alert, a predator pacing the halls of his own home. And my ex-husband Mark is circling like a vulture, ready to swoop in and steal the narrative for his own twisted game. Sending Leo alone feels like suicide. But ignoring the request could mean losing our only chance at justice forever. This whole thing started as my story, a second act I hoped would be quiet, simple, a love story. Instead, it's become a fight for the truth, a fight for these kids, and a fight for the memory of a woman I never even met. We're not detectives. We are a broken, terrified, and surprisingly tough little family, standing at the most important crossroads of our lives. We have to make a choice. And now, you are part of this alliance. You have to help us make it. You are the alliance. What's the move? A. Leo goes alone. B. Jessica goes instead of Leo. C. They both go, ignoring the warning. Decide their fate in the comments. Episode 12 is The Meeting. The secrets of what really happened the night Sarah died will finally be revealed. Subscribe and brace yourselves. You are not ready.